must have spent nights sitting on a mountainside, looking up at the Jebusite city of Jerusalem going, what a cool place to live. I'd really like to live up there, man. That's got to be a great view of the neighborhood, you know what I mean? The Jebusites lived there, man. I can only imagine...
Jebusites lived in Jerusalem?
We never conquered them. Joshua never dislodged them. There was a small clan of Jebusites that lived in Jerusalem. Didn't belong to Judah, didn't belong to Benjamin, didn't belong to anybody. It had never been conquered. So David sees this city, probably as a kid, you know, and he looks at it and goes, this would be a cool place to live. And he's a brilliant strategist, you know that. You need to understand, the city of Jerusalem is surrounded on three sides by a valley. You can't invade the city of Jerusalem except from the north. It's just surrounded on three sides. It's just these steep cliffs. So when you're on top of Jerusalem, it's a natural fortress. So what happens now is that David decides to move from Hebron to consolidate his power over the whole of the country. Now, why did we pick Washington, D.C. to be the capital of the United States? Because if we had put the capital in any of the states, Pennsylvania really pushed for Philadelphia. You need to know that. Big time.
Well, it was there for a little bit, wasn't it?
That's right. The reason it's called Pennsylvania Avenue is tipping the hat to Pennsylvania because it didn't get the capital. You knew that, right? Yeah. The point is, Washington, D.C. doesn't belong to any state, so that no state could claim it. The Jebusite city of Jerusalem didn't belong to any clan. So Hebron couldn't say, hey man, why are you leaving us for, Benjamin? I thought you were our boy, you know what I mean? So he could technically move to a place that had no historical connection to any clans, that was in the center of the nation, and consolidate power from there. Does everybody see that? Everybody understand why Jerusalem became such an essential point? It had no history with any of the other clans. No clan could say he was showing partiality over another thing. There's another point about the Jebusite city, and that's this. Strategically, it's in the center of everything. It is, without a doubt, the center of the world in some ways. I mean, if you think about the three continents coming together, Asia, Africa, and Europe, coming together, one of the reasons Israel is such a strategic place is it's that landmass that all three landmass come together on. That central Middle East situation. And there's Jerusalem, which is so well fortified. So there is no history there. He's probably liked the place because it's a beautiful place. And how does he take the city? Who takes the city with him? What army does he use? David and his men.
Oh, those guys that...
Right, the 600
guys.
Right. Notice that he doesn't use an Israelite army. He doesn't use an army levied from the northern tribes or from the southern tribes. Okay? He takes the city with his own mercenary men. Now, what does that do for him and the city? It makes it his. He's not beholden to anybody for that city. Him and his 600 men took the city. And as a result of that, what does he do when he takes the city? What does he call it? He names it after himself. Now, it takes a lot of chutzpah in some regards. Okay? But this is going to be the beginning. We may never get to the end of all of this because this is some heavy theology here and I want to spend some time on it. But I want you first and foremost to understand what we have here. What we have is David and his men taking this city. Has no historical context to any other tribe, so no one can beat that they're being slighted and somebody else is being favored. No one's being favored. Positionally, it's right in the middle of the country. It's perfect to unite the nation. Okay? It's strategically well placed. It's an impregnable city. It's almost impossible to conquer because it's got three things on the side. And his men take it, and he names the town after him. So, the city is now personally connected to David. There's no history of a previous king there that's associated with the nation of Israel. So when you talk about the city of Jerusalem and you talk about its king, you're ultimately talking about a Davidic line. Got that? Although we don't have a dynastic order yet, that'll happen in chapter 7. We can already see that the city of Jerusalem and the name David are going to be interwoven for the rest of time. Got that? So if we took the time to talk about the theology of Jerusalem, this would be its origins, or one of its origins. Certainly Melchizedek comes out of Jerusalem as well. But in this case, you can see that David is going to be intricately connected to the city of his name and Jerusalem. Got that? Now, there's an interesting little, kind of taunt that goes on between David and the Jebusites. Jebusites got this city. Nobody's been able to defeat them. And they're standing up there going, nah, 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 you can't get us. Nah, 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 nah. Look, man, the lame and the blind can hold this place against you. You know what I mean? We think that's what it means. It could mean, we'll make you lame and blind if you come up. There's a whole, again, Hebrew's a little torturous here. Remember, we have problems with our own English sometimes. That's why we hire lawyers to figure out what things mean. Right? If language was really clear, we wouldn't need you guys. So, it's a little torturous here. Raymond's laughing, as he knows. My point is that we have this thing, and then how do they take the city? Well, there's this intimation that, when a city is under siege, it needs an access to a well. And there is, the story goes that there is this water shaft that goes from the top of the citadel, the city, that goes down behind the wall and goes to a spring. And so during the time of siege, you get water that way. So David figured out a way to defeat the city. He says, whoever climbs up the well and whips them, they'll win. And in Chronicles it says that Joab does just that. And so he defeats them. Okay? And he defeats them, and then it says, and David perceived that God was with him. Right? What it says? And twice it's going to say, and God was with him. So now he's in Jerusalem, and the writer decides to just give us the trajectory of his ministry and life in Jerusalem. So what does he tell us? Look.
He took up residence there.
He took up residence.
He built up the area around it.
Right. What he describes is the way to describe the wealth of a king. If you want, look, if I'm going to introduce Joe at a public meeting, of a bunch of lawyers, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to say what schools he went to. I'm going to talk about the law review that he wrote for. I'm going to talk about the cases that he may have pled before the New York Supreme Court or the United States Supreme Court. Those are the things that give you credentials in that community. If I got up and I said, he's got a great voice, he can really play racquetball, and he's got 4 kids. Well, I like that, but that doesn't give him the credibility of the community he's in. But when you talk about ancient kings, and you want to talk about stability, and you want to talk about wealth, this is what you're talking about. You talk about the battles they won, the buildings they built, and the kids they sired, and the number of wives they have, because that represents wealth. And so understand, it's not glorifying it, Andy, but it's using the language of that day to describe who David was. He settled in Jerusalem. It tells us how long he ruled, 40 and a half years or whatever it is, and that he did well there. He had a lot of kids and a lot of women. You see, the problem is you can have concubines, but you got to feed them. You know what I mean? You got to take care of them. You got to keep them in clothes. And you got to service them. You know what I'm saying? So the idea is that if a man has a lot of concubines and a lot of women, that he is prolific, youthful, and virile, and that he's wealthy because he's got to take care of these women. So it all represents power, sphere of influence. Okay, it's not justifying it; it's describing it, and that's something we need to understand when we approach